to advance at any cost, and that cost is the lives of Russian soldiers. The enemy has concentrated units from 3 armies at once in the direction of Pokrovsk, pressing simultaneously from the north, south, and west. Due to the large number of personnel, the enemy managed to infiltrate Pokrovsk and amass forces for further movements in the area, disorienting our forward positions by acting from the rear and flanks. This is an unusual tactic. Why doesn't the enemy engage in battle immediately, but instead tries to disperse in the surrounding areas, waiting for more personnel? Due to gaps in our defenses in the south of Pokrovsk, the enemy was able to break into the city in small infantry groups from the direction of Travnia and Troyan. If you look at the map, at the deep state map, you can see that most of the city is already effectively in the red zone. And we are showing the directions of the enemy's attacks. What does this tell us? It tells us that the southern part of the city is already effectively occupied. For example, the Sonyaknai or Shakhtarsky districts are already effectively under enemy control, and the enemy has managed to reach this road. The T0504 and advance along it. This arrow here shows the current direction of the enemy forces' movement. They are moving essentially in the area where the local fog is concentrated. Fighting is already taking place in the north, essentially on the outskirts of the city. Also, the fierce enemy managed to link up with its forces that were advancing from Kotlan along the tree line. They also managed to cut the highway and reach this spot, approximately where the former Vok gas station was, managing to link up and effectively block this part of Pokrovsk. That is, the enemy is now moving in the direction, for example, we see Zvirova. From the direction of Zvirova, they are advancing toward Hrishin along the reservoirs, while the other part of the enemy forces turned in the direction of Pavlohrad along this T0504 highway. The enemy has also occupied Novopavlivka, which is to the southeast, and is moving toward Rivne. The situation there is also very tense, and I would even say critical, since the enemy is also advancing from Chervony Lyman. And according to our information, they have managed to reach this intersection. That is, if they have cut it off, and if the enemy manages to reach the outskirts of Rivne, as we can see here. A large part of our troops, who are now putting up fierce resistance in this pocket, will simply be blocked. For now, we are not talking about a full encirclement, but rather a semi-encirclement. However, the situation is difficult, and as the soldiers themselves say, it is closer to critical. As a result of the successful, let's say, counter-offensive actions of our fighters, particularly near Rodnitske, in the direction of Suvorova and towards Fedorivka, the enemy has somewhat reduced the pace of their pressure in this sector, especially in the area of Chervony Lyman and Rodnitske. However, the enemy is not abandoning their intentions. So, in fact, the situation right now deserves attention because the enemy is trying to exert pressure on our positions, both from the north and from the south. And if you look at the situation, the enemy has made advances in the area of Novoekonomikne and Mykolaiivka, in the area of Chervony Lyman from the north towards Mirnohrad. There are also advances by the enemy's 2nd General Army from the direction of Mirolyubivka towards the outskirts of Mirnohrad and from the direction of Kozatska. In this direction, in fact, the enemy is already reaching this road, which is the ring road near Mirnohrad, called Stepova. If the enemy manages to reach this road, then let's say the issue of logistics for our troops, as well as the supply of ammunition and evacuation, will become very difficult and critical. Our soldiers, the 7th Air Assault Corps of the Air Assault Forces, are currently holding the outskirts of Mirnohrad. Thank you. They are clearing the enemy, in fact, from the streets and outskirts of Mirnohrad from sabotage and reconnaissance groups that occasionally infiltrate the city. The enemy is not abandoning their overall plan and is now trying to push from the direction of Mayak towards Pankivka in order to link up with their units concentrated in the direction of Shakov. As a result of our successful offensive actions, we managed to achieve this. The enemy was pushed back from Ivanivka, from Dorozhne, and essentially from the southern flank of Nikonorivka. The enemy has reserves significantly reinforced by the 2nd General Army. The enemy is deploying the 155th Marine Brigade here, trying to break through towards Shakov and in the direction of Sofiivka in order to unblock their forces concentrated near Shakov, who are again attempting to advance and attack Novishakov and Ivanivka. We managed to clear out a number of ravines, but the enemy is not sparing any effort or resources, so they are trying with all their might to advance at any cost. The enemy is rapidly advancing into the city and is already posting online the locations of the territories they have captured in the city of Pokrovsk, which until recently were under the control of the armed forces of Ukraine. The situation is critical. Yulia Kyrienko knows exactly what is happening in Pokrovsk. Here is her report.
These are drone pilots from the 25th Airborne Brigade trying to leave Pokrovsk, where their positions were located. They are evacuating the wounded because they had to engage in a firefight right in the residential neighborhoods of the city. The occupiers advanced there surprisingly quickly. They are being recorded in the hundreds and they are already taking up positions and mining the area. But most importantly, they are trying to block our infantry, which is still far from the city on the southern sectors. Our troops are gathering reinforcements in the Pokrovsk direction. There is news that the GUR is airlifting its special forces by helicopter. The General Staff is bringing in assault units and SSO combat groups, all to clear the residential neighborhoods of occupiers. The occupiers are already strolling leisurely through the streets of Pokrovsk and, as our reconnaissance drone recorded, are driving civilians out of the houses that still remain among the city ruins. Enemy groups began infiltrating Pokrovsk through Zvirova, a village in the southwestern part of Pokrovsk. From there, they moved on to Hryshain to cut off the road from Pologihrad to Pokrovsk. It was there that they hung the Russian tricolor last week. True, within an hour our FPV drones had already shot it down, but the enemy infantry remained in the city. Groups of Russians were spotted near the railway and in the central districts. The city is gradually turning into a grey zone and the Russians have increased pressure on it and the neighbouring Mirnohrad from three sides. Russia has amassed a force of up to 11,000 occupiers to push our troops out of the Pokrovsk-Mirnohrad agglomeration. This is according to the 7th Corps, which is holding the defense there. Putin has already claimed that both cities are blocked, but that's not true. Enemy infantry are being hunted down and destroyed, and advancing is by no means easy for them.
Basically, it's about the movement of groups trying to concentrate at a given point. With their further movement, they transition to an assault, and the enemy may deploy small groups on motorcycles. There was also an incident 2 days ago when 2 motorcycles with their crews were destroyed. Today, too, some motor vehicles have been destroyed.
The Russians are acting in Pokrovsk just as they once pushed our troops out of Kushchina. First, they covered the entire sky. Above our defenders, drones, so much so that the infantry had to enter their positions over several days in a row, walking dozens of kilometers on foot with supplies and ammunition.
Sometimes for 3 days or more, they were forced to hide somewhere, waiting until the enemy shifted their attention away from them. If we take Pokrovsk now, groups are already entering there on foot, and from there, they move accordingly along.
Then they started pressing with infantry from the flanks. Their task, according to the defense forces, is to reach the road connecting Pokrovsk and Mirnohrad and block it in order to finally cut off the last remaining routes of communication with our infantry that still exist. The General Staff now states that despite the fighting in the city, our troops are not blocked. This is indeed the case, as confirmed by open-source intelligence analysts. But the infantry, which has been stationed on the outskirts of Pokrovsk in the Lysivka and Novopavlivka area for more than a year and a half, is in a very difficult situation. Yulia Kyrienko, Special Correspondent 1+1.